Okay. Hello, ladies. Well, thank you very much for joining our second Igmena Google Hangout today. I'm really thankful for you to join our, I should say, uncharted and unexplored topic in the MENA region. Today we will talk about internet gender policy gaps in your regions and your countries. Let me reintroduce myself for you again. My name is Hamza Ben Mahrez. I'm the policy analyst lead of HIPOS Foundation on the Internet Governance MENA region program. And before kicking the debate today, I will try to share with you instructions. Try to turn off your mobile phone or any connected devices around you that can really cause harm or vibrance in your background. And try to unmute your voice while the other speaker or debater is giving, I should say, her perspective. And because we have great women leaders coming from different perspectives, and to let everybody speak and hear everybody, try to limit your answer to 1 minute or 1 minute 30 seconds to hear all the perspectives. Before further ado, I will give you the floor now for each one of you to reflect on her academic and professional experience and introduce herself for us. Should we begin by Nardin, who joined us from Egypt?
Hello, my name is Nardin, known as well as Noor Al-Nimr. I'm a student at the British University in Egypt and I'm studying political science. I have worked for a number of organizations that vary from development to diplomatic, that is concerned with the foreign affairs, and to other offices that are concerned with organizing local policy-making events. So far, I've been interested in internet governance first to realize whether or not there existing structural problems that basically make the Middle East and North Africa lagging behind, and this is one of the themes that I think we'll tap into in this discussion.
We are very honored to have you with us here, Nardin. So should we go to Sanna, who joined us, who is from Pakistan, but who joined us from the United States?
Well, I'm in Canada right now, actually.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sanna Ali, and I did my master's just recently at the London School of Economics. So I was in the UK, and I did it in media and communications governance with a specialization in internet governance. I've also got some experience with NGO work, development NGOs, and I'm very interested in the impact of the internet and ICT technologies in general in development efforts and the impact it has on women's rights. So I'm very excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
We are very honored to have you here as well. So should we go, I should say, to your neighbor, where you are in Canada, Mrs. Azaz, who joined us from the United States.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Arzaz Shami. I'm originally from Sudan. I'm a researcher, and I came to the field of internet governance by the way of human rights when I was working a lot on like arbitrary detention and what happens during these detentions. And I noticed that there's a very, very increasing focus from the government on people's life online, and I started to put these together, that online and offline are not separable, and actually it's being part of the oppression of expression. So I do write and analyze the Freedom on the Net report for Sudan section for 2015, and I'm working on 2016 now. Also, I'm interested in social media, collective action and agency, and civil society, not only in Sudan but in most of the developing countries. And that's all about it. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty sure that your perspective will be fruitful. So should we go to Sarah, who joined us from Tunisia?
Well, hello everybody. My name is Sarah Atafi. I'm a law research student with specialization in international humanitarian law. I've actually been working on human rights issues for quite a while right now, and I've been involved with internet governance issues since December 2015. Right now I'm an Igmena member and an IPA author. Thank you.
Thanks. And last but not least, we are joined by Ines Kanan from Jordan. Can you introduce yourself for us, Ines?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Ines Kanan. I'm a lecturer at Jordan University of Science and Technology. I'm a computer science master holder. I'm a researcher also in the field of internet governance and Internet of Things. Also, I have a research including cognitive radio networks, cybersecurity, and big data. I have been a vice president for business development and fundraising at Isaac Jordan, also volunteering in many other NGOs. Recently, I'm exploring the benefit of using a local internet exchange point in smart cities with the Cologne University.
Well, thank you very much, Ines. I'm really thrilled and excited to have all of this expertise in this hangout. And I want to ask the first question to Ms. Sanna. So how do you feel, Sanna, being a women user of the internet? And what are the problems now that you're encountering in terms of access, if there are any?
Sure. So as a user of the internet, I think what we see repeatedly on the internet is that offline environments reemerge online. So places that women feel unsafe and the reasons that they are inhibited from accessing public spaces, things like that, tend to remanifest themselves online. But that's something that happens once you get online. I think for the Middle East in particular, one of the biggest issues is getting online and that access in the first place, and I think a lot of those stem more from economic barriers rather than social inhibitors. But social inhibitors also impact the economic reasons that women are unable to get access to the internet. So I think we have two different things at play here. One is what happens when you do get online and what your experience is like being online as a woman. And then the other thing is how being a woman inhibits you from accessing the economic basic needs that you have in these countries to be able to get access.
Oh, yes, great perspective. Yes, so I want to hear from Nardin as well, from your local context, or give us first of all your feeling as a woman using the internet, and what are the obstacles in your local context in terms of accessing the internet.
The thing is, I've lived most of my life in Saudi Arabia, and as you know, it has a lot of social stigmas on how women are oppressed, unable to access anything on their own. If you want to access the internet, they introduced a law, or they didn't, it was not really enacted, but they wanted to introduce a law that would basically entail that there's a mahram, a guardian, a male guardian, that monitors your internet monitors a female while she's surfing the internet. Something that's absolutely ridiculous, but it never happened in real life. That's the thing. As long as you have an internet connection and you have the skills and the ability to surf the internet, you as a female in Saudi Arabia can just access it and do whatever you want. Same here in Egypt. If you actually have access to the internet, which is something that's really easy, although Egypt has scored as a 40% penetration rate, which is relatively low for the only country in the region that has an IXP that's internationally connected to another continent. Well, regardless of these barriers and these restrictions that are imposed, as long as you have a connection, you're there. But me, as a middle-class person, as a person who comes from middle class, and as a female who comes from a context of empowerment, that we should not go to the traditions of oppressing women and not expressing ourselves, I think it's been really challenging seeing so many social stigmas online that keep enforcing themselves, although the online platform presents a very elusive opportunity for people to change. Just elusive because it's not realized yet. You still see that there's a continuity of taboos and self-censorship online, and this kind of enforcement is very challenging to people who want to make change. So I think, yeah.
So basically, you're saying that the social stigma that women live offline, they can happen online. You can find them, and you can find them even reinforced.
That's actually true. They're being reinforced online, and this is done by the individuals themselves. And there is why internet has a lot of potential for women to interact and exchange ideas to actually inebriate themselves with these kind of barriers.
A fantastic perspective, Nadia. So I want to contrast that with Mrs. Azaz's perspective on the social stigma and how those offline problems are recurrent, and you can find them as well offline.
Yes, that's true, and I really agree with Sina and my colleague from Egypt on that, because recently I've been studying this closed societies for women online, which are like closed groups where they can exchange ideas. That they look apparently in the surveys that they're very progressed and very trying to defeat the taboos, but actually they're reproducing the same narrative that they are up against in real life. And also, even in the political arena, when I was researching human rights and female activists, they are persecuted and actually really targeted for their online presence as much and as hard as they are targeted for their offline presence. And even online, sometimes even expressing your opinion. I remember there was a whole campaign against one of the bloggers because she explained her idea about being about wearing a hijab, and the reaction were very aggressive, especially from the Twitter people, which you think they're the millennials, they're more like less likely to be that conservative or like very very linear in their thought, but it was. And I feel like every time, so I feel like it's more emphasized online, and whatever we see offline is, but it's just the methods are different. And I really want to tap into this idea of self-censorship, because this is a huge setback. You can go against laws, you can change policies, you can make more access, but if people are inhibited and are not able to bring out themselves, this is really serious.
And
Yes.
maybe your justification is maybe because of fear, or maybe because of social stereotypes, or because of fear of saying things online that maybe can
I think there's a host of reasons why.
Can be harmful.
I think the idea of privacy is very important, because usually in real life, if you have an argument with someone, they will just respond to you on the spot. It's only you and the audience who are around. But if the battlefield is the online, there's one of the reasons that women are very afraid and actually caged in, and they try not to be out there, is the digital security aspect of it. Our life is connected to our phone. You know, your one photo, if it gets out of your phone, you're gone. And we recently saw this debate happening in Egypt when one of the guests who was a victim of sexual harassment was like actually punished for coming forward by her privacy, you know, basically. So I feel like there are a host of reasons why women are shying away from being themselves or speaking and practicing the self-censorship. It could be their vulnerability, their digital vulnerability, and also the validation, and people online are the same as offline. It's just the methods and the channels in which they express themselves are different, but we don't change online, and if we do, sometimes we change for the worst, not for the best.
It's fantastic perspective, Aza. So we will look at the root causes for that particular problem and the upcoming questions. But let me go to Sarah, who is a Tunisian blogger and Tunisian internet policy author. So in a country seen as a progressive country in terms of women's rights, do women enjoy the same online rights, same as on the internet? And how do you feel as someone coming from Tunisia? Do you feel that you share the same offline rights online?
Well, I totally agree on what the lady said just now about the stigmas and problems that we are living offline are being reproduced online. I think the basic problem, even in Tunisia, is still persisting here, is that it is related to access in general. The issue includes equal access to new technologies by women and girls. I think the problem is also related to a central question of whether inequalities or in access of the internet and types of content available online are in fact reinforcing social attitudes towards women And by social attitudes, I mean stigmas that are being reproduced offline. Issues, in fact, extend far beyond basic access, including the availability of relevant content, and of course the participation of women in the policy making and the processes of making the laws that are then to protect them online. One more question is that the security of women online. I think that in the developing world and in countries like ours, like Indonesia or Egypt or Jordan or the Arab countries in general, I think there is a huge problem of security online for women, as they are being a vulnerable category online, and this is affecting their access to internet and their access to ICT technologies, etc. I think the importance here is to give gender issues some importance, either is in terms of policy making or in terms of technical issues, or the problem of
or in terms of awareness, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of awareness about the issue, people and women should be more aware.
Education as well.
Yes, fantastic. So I will go back to Sanna and ask her the second question. So maybe a quantitative question. So what are the size of internet gender gap, maybe in your local context, or maybe you can reflect on Pakistan, and what are the main causes that prevent women from accessing the internet? Unmute yourself, Sanna.
Hello? We good?
Yeah, good. We hear you.
So yes, as I was saying, we also have about the thing is that the gender disparity, the statistics in Pakistan are like in many other countries. Just this data is not collected, it is not reported, and this is one of the major things that the ITU has been pushing for, is to collect the data, make sure national governments and even ISPs are recording this gender disaggregated data. Because without the data, we're not going to be able to reach one of our development goals that the World Information Society kind of put forth, which was to minimize the gender gap in internet use. So one of the things, like I said earlier, was the fact that you have economic barriers to access, which is a huge problem. You only have about 40% of the country able to access the internet, and the majority, and 80% of these are through mobile and not even fixed broadband connections. So that also impacts hugely what kind of resources are going to be accessible, because you have fears of how much data you're going to be using. And because of this, you see trends where people are more likely to use platforms like Facebook for news consumption rather than a specialized news app. So you have a lot of Facebook use. It's the highest used website in Pakistan. The other thing that you notice is that women, for the reasons that we've been talking about, the social stigmas associated with their use, they tend to be more consumers of content rather than producers. They don't have the confidence online even to be producing content and to speak their minds, or be the ones that are putting themselves at risk for shaming, because that shaming speaks to their position in the society that they occupy. If the words that they speak online are connected to the person they are offline, then there's the fear of shame, because they are living in societies where they are vulnerable members. So I think this fear of shame and being connected, once again reinforces the importance of privacy and being allowed to be anonymous on the internet. I think it's one of the major ways that women are allowed to express themselves online. And I think this was touched upon by some of the other ladies.
It's fantastic perspective, Sana. So I'm keen to hear the perspective of Nardin on the same question of what is this the scope or the level of gender gap in your own context, and what prevents the women from accessing the internet based on that scope or that reach.
There has been two reports that I've actually consulted to address this point. The first was compiled by the United Nations, and it actually raised that 33% of men have access to the internet in the Middle East and North Africa, compared to a 29% to women access, which is actually a very, like, the disparity is very little. But then when you come to dissect this kind of statistics and you go into more detailed, it seems that women access in Egypt is estimated at 32% by Intel, and this is actually a very high figure, bearing in mind that there are so many structural barriers of illiteracy. Egypt has the illness of a very high illiteracy rate, and therefore this rate, compared to the fact that we have 40 to 60% of middle-aged women that are educated and have access to the internet, 32% is actually very good. But then when it comes to the majority of women that are not empowered by illiteracy, first, and second, by not being able to access the internet, we have a problem. Internet should be accessible because basically it doesn't really take you much to browse the content. All that it takes you is that if you have someone who's literate, and this can be a barrier. What if one in the household is illiterate? But then there are so many infographics that can be produced. Infographics are basically very readable for someone who's illiterate. And at the same time, there is a prospect that internet access in Egypt can be enhanced if there is computer literacy programs. And so the gap is not very sizable, but then it's very sizable when we take in the consideration of class divisions and poverty. Therefore, the solution stems from this kind of perspective.
So we need we call the automation of women use more ICTs and to equip women with technology that we can really leverage that gap. This is what
Absolutely.
So I will try to questions that we kind of try to delve on. So what do you feel as somebody coming from Jordan or as a woman using the internet, and what are the major access problems that you're encountering or women encounter in Jordan? Ines, can you hear me? So I think has a technical problem. She cannot hear us. So I will go to Azaz and ask you the same questions. So what is the scope of the internet gender gap in Sudan, and what are the major problems that Sudanese women confront while using the internet?
Sure. Well, in Sudan, we are a country at war. So there are other aspects that are into play when it comes to that. And so if we're talking about women in general, if you're talking about urbanized women, then it could be literacy, it could be economic barriers, it could be just like self-censor aspect. But when you're talking about women in war zones, it's just a matter of not having access at all, equally as men. The most recent research I've done that there are no internet access in any of the IDP camps that are hosting at least 1 million population of 1 million, and most of them are women, because we know that the war usually recruits men, and are the women and children who are left behind. So in that aspect, I think they'll have no access, and I think economic barriers as well. And as Sanna mentioned, that Facebook and these platforms are mostly visited because it does not require a lot, and it's more visual, and you can get the information faster without vetting it. But whether they're contributing to the content or not, I highly doubt it, that Sudanese women have the platform for them to do so, because there's so many barriers and so many self-censor consideration that they have to take in mind. The government is cracking down on online platforms, and they're trying to govern this fluid space. They're really in a limbo now, but they're trying to organize it under digital journalism. And we're hearing more and more about cases of defamation and cases of like fabrication of news and whatnot. So just recently, a female activist who talked about an not a trend, something that happens in most societies, which is like child molestation, and she was like dragged into a police, and she was like forced to do to retract from her accounts and stuff like that. So there are many layers of things that a woman in Sudan would face, which is the legal persecution, the social stigma, and even the validation of the society around you. So many of them, they're not contributing to the content, and if they do, I feel like they're more confirming and very complicit to it, more than they're coming against it. So they're just reaffirming and reinforcing it. That in case they have access to it. That's in that case.
Excellent perspective, Azaz. So Sarah, I want to ask Sarah, because Sarah, you wrote a very nice article on the issue of gender gap. So can you tell us quantitatively what are the level of internet gender gap, whether in Tunisia or in the MENA region, and is this preventing a woman in Tunisia from accessing the internet?
Well, talking about the size of the gap or measuring the internet gender gap, let me first highlight the fact that there is no data collecting in our developing world or in the Arab world, which makes it very hard to measure the problem. Now, on an international level, or according to a report to the ITU, I think there is, or the gender gap is estimated at 200 million fewer women online as of 2013. And it is also important to highlight that the fact that gender gap is currently more pronounced in the developing countries, where 16% fewer women than men use the internet, compared to only 2% fewer women than men in the developed world. According to the same report. Well, now talking about the different barriers that are preventing women from internet access. Well, first of all, we are mainly talking about affordability, so it is economic, in fact. We are talking about accessibility and the appropriateness of access. Well, affordability gaps in wages, and therefore gaps in purchasing power, are major determinants of the different abilities of men and women to access ICTs. Women comparatively limited access to ICTs mean that they have fewer opportunities to access the better paid skilled jobs. In particular, lower income hinders the purchase of equipment and payment of broadband fees. So there's also, or the second point is the role of illiteracy that is inhibiting access of the internet in the Arab world, which poses a greater barrier to online access to women rather than men. Across all the developing countries, only 75% of women are literate, compared to 86% of men, with far greater margins of difference in some countries like Sudan or other countries in conflicts, actually. Without this fundamental skill, the internet will remain out of reach for women. There's also the point of security, there's the point of surveillance, and there is the social attitudes or the stigmas that are going from the offline world to the online world, which actually present the barriers to women to access the internet or the ICTs technologies.
I think, well, as men, we have a duty responsibility as well with you to tackle all of those problems. So I will go back to Sanna again and try to focus now on maybe the root causes of that internet gender gap, and then you can bridge that with what do you do as a women leader in your own context to try to boost and empower women voices on the internet?
Just unmute. Yeah, so what we just heard about the illiteracy, that is one of the major concerns for why women are not able to get online. The divide between literate women and men is, across the board quite large. And one of the other kind of aggregating factors you see is this urban and rural divide. And a lot of the rural women in Pakistan especially, they're not only not literate, but a lot of the rural areas have absolutely no access to the internet in terms of fixed connections. Once again, it's through mobile that they're able to access the internet. But again, mobiles are generally seen with people who have purchasing power, and especially in the rural area, the role of the woman is not to be the one going out and having that purchasing power, being an economic contributor. So for the most part, what you see in these rural areas is a lack of access to internet, even on mobile, for women. So that's, the illiteracy aspect of it really exacerbates that situation. The other thing is that in these areas where you would have men accessing the internet through participating in internet cafes, those are not places that women can go. Those are not places that they want to go. Those are not places that they can easily walk into and feel welcome. So these are the kinds of things that, where the government's responsibility comes in, not only to tackle the divides between rural and urban populations, but to target the women in rural areas, because they're the most vulnerable, obviously. They're not only victims of the economic barriers they face, but also the social stigmas that they face. There's a lack of education. They're not able to forget meaningful participation. There's just no participation. There's no possibility of participation in general for them. So, subsidized access to mobile internet, allowing the opening of women's only cyber cafes, things like that are really the only way to get at this, the rural population. Because right now, proper internet access in Pakistan is concentrated in 3 major cities, and aside from that, there's no chance of participation without having to pay substantial amounts on mobile data.
And yeah, so and what do you do? What are the policies that you can think of, or what do you do from your personal perspective to try maybe to tackle those problems as somebody who is keen on using the internet and empowering women?
Absolutely. So like I said, there needs to be places for women to be able to access the internet. Government subsidized opening of cyber cafes. So internet cafes where they're able to go. I think also there's been efforts to have charities and developmental projects raised where you're able to donate data. So if you have data left over at the end of the month from your phone bill, you're able to donate to someone who needs it. And things like this, I think, are going to be essential in making sure that the rural populations in countries where there is that huge divide are going to be able to get online, and for it to become normal, especially for women to be able to get online. Because generally the stereotypes for women in these places is, once again, they don't need a mobile phone because they are not mobile. They are stationary, they stay within the home. Things that they are pictured as being for them to go online would be for things like, watching a soap opera or getting recipes, and those are not really meaningful engagements. What is the return on them for these women? How is that socially empowering? So these are things, again, like we said, offline is going to remanifest online. So government needs to educate, have education kind of campaigns.
Or incentives, or economic incentives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So same question goes to Nardin from Egypt. I'm really keen on hearing your perspective about the issue of the root cause problems and maybe decentralization policies that you can think of that can empower women in poor rural areas and minimize the gap between the center and the periphery of the country.
Well, to resolve the gap between the center and the periphery, this is a very extensive matter that cannot be resolved simply by asserting solutions such as empowering women by giving them data or mobile phones. This is a very idealistic kind of solution, because the solution is very deeply enshrined in how there is a great gap between the center and the periphery. This kind of structural condition is borne by the people and borne by the local constituencies they live in. It's embedded in how politics is digested into their system. So everything is just very deeply rooted that it cannot be resolved with such a very idealistic solution. The thing is, this gap exists because these people have been deprived, and especially women, have been deprived of their access to education, access to participation, access to representation very, very, very early in the history of their constituencies. Therefore, working on grassroots emancipation of this kind of oppression and social condition by bridging out between the gaps. If you realize, even in rural communities where there is a very high level of poverty, in Egypt, women still attend universities, they still go to high school. They still are mobile, they can go to the center and back to the periphery again. Therefore, there is a harboring and transportation of ideas and technologies. Therefore, the ratio that does not access the internet is basically the ratio of older women. So the project that can be established is how the younger females can bridge the technologies, the ideas, the tools, and even the hardware that they have knowledge of to the older generations. This can be a proposition. What I think is also a very decisive barrier to decisive factor to the existing gender gap in Egypt is the sense of security online. There is, as Azaz has mentioned, there is a very deeply instilled sensation that internet is heavily surveyed. Any female that does not cover her identity is vulnerable to harassment, vulnerable for accusations that are sometimes associated with pride, which is another social stigma. But this has been lately changing. People have abandoned using very attractive names such as the princess of the night or the guardian of whatever. They used to use these kind of titles to actually be empowered to go online, and now no, they're abandoning this. They're using their identity and they're actively participating. So opening up a dialogue of what makes women feel more safe, unlike men online, can be a very good starting point for enacting policies that would eliminate the gender gap in Egypt.
Uh, it's really fantastic. I mean, hearing all of your perspectives, and I'm learning as much as I can from the debate, because it's such a an explorative topic for me. But I will go to return back to Ines and try to see if she is hearing us or not. Ines, are you here? I think Ines has a technical. Yeah, Ines. So quickly, try to give us your perspective of a woman. How do you feel as a woman using the internet, and what are the root causes and of accessing the internet in Jordan? So give us your perspective from your country.
Okay, I feel ambitious and a more competitive woman because the internet opened for me unprecedented opportunities, and for the gender gap in Jordan, we can say that we are the same as major Arab countries. But we have some statistics show that 75 of Jordanians have used the internet, and most or more likely from the males. And for to be more specific, we have uncharted study. So I can't give you a specific number for women and men and female usage. So we have some barrier for women to not to prevent them from using or accessing the online resources, such as that some women simply do not know what internet is, or it might how it might be benefit their rights, and they have never learned to use the internet, and for the cultural norms and expectation keep all the women away from the internet. And we also see in Jordan have some isolated area, or we can see it an a remote area that can't reach as the major cities in Jordan. So we can't also think about the power of these barriers vary from those cities and intersect with a range of socio-economic indicators such as income and education level and employment. Do you hear me, Hamza?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Fantastic perspective, Ines. But thank you very much for reaching out to us. I should go to Azaz as well to ask her the same question of the root causes of the internet gender gap, maybe in Sudan, and what do you think? What do you do as a woman using the internet to empower women's voices, whether in your local context or in Sudan?
Well, as many of them, the ladies have mentioned, I think the social barriers, whatever the stigma or that are governing the offline, are pretty much reproduced again and again in online. And I think for that to break away, there's a lot of work that has to happen offline. And I think it works from pushing from the bottom, pushing from the top, so in policy level and also from grassroots level. But in Sudan in particular, in that context, I found it a little bit hard because the government itself plays on the gender, whatever these differences between men and women, and incorporates this honor and good name on being a good woman and whatnot. This is all incorporated, and it's a way of oppressing dissidents and people who are against it. So I a little bit apprehensive that I'm not sure that the government on its level will do something to engage more people, because it's not really interested in engaging more people. It has a lot already. So and then definitely not wanting any woman to be part of this debate in a progressive way. So but on the grassroots level, I feel like there's also an issue, even within the community of activists or new generation, about the right for women to express themselves. It's very interesting that there's a facade that the women can speak whatever they want to know. No, they can't. There's so many consequences and precautions that happen if you speak. And nobody can stop that. And the way for you to litigate, even in legal ways, to take your right back, it's very little. So I feel like and I feel like in our countries or in the region, because we have a lot of political issues, we focused a lot on the government and how to oppose the government and how to highlight what the government is doing, but we kind of overlooked how our society needs to change itself. You know what I mean? So we're not prioritizing changing stigma and leading a movement for equality and engaging more women from human rights perspective and all that. Human rights issues only come if their government is in the sentence. You know what I mean? But when other factors or other players are oppressing women or oppressing anyone, even GLBT or whatever, if the government is not part of it, nobody kind of cares. You know what I mean? So we need to have a very true, meaningful perspective on what human rights is, because this is, I think, the core. If you think about human rights, if you think about citizenship rights, if you think about individual right to access to information, access to express themselves, access, like right of assembly, if you really, this is really rooted in people's behavior and perspective, I feel like they produce better users, better internet users, and they will produce a better civil society.
Citizens, or better citizens.
Exactly, and then you will have a better better civil society that stands for those rights and works on multiple levels. Works with societies to understand women's right to speak. It works with the government to have better policies to engage women, and it works with government to have a better environment and a conducive environment for interaction, and all this will better our all well-being, because when we talk about the internet, it's not for fun only. There's so much that can come out of this sphere. There's collective action, there's crowdsourcing, there's crowdfunding, there's bringing humanity, connecting people. So it's not just a phase that it's only for meaningless communication. I feel like the internet actually could really have a positive impact on our offline, and it's really contributing to our growth in different ways.
Yeah, and be a tool that can serve the public good. So that's yes. So I have the next question. So we will look at it's a little bit of a legal technical question. I will try to ask Sana. Go back to Sana. So what are the legal liability policy that should be attached to website operators to create incentives to adopt preemptive and self-regulatory measures against online gender gap?
Right. So as we've kind of just been saying, is that the problem here goes so much deeper than anything that can be done by website operators, because we have the access problems, and then we have the social, the analog social problems that prevent women from participating online. But I think at the very least, what can be done on the ISP level, so the people providing the services, the platform for the women to come on, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, these are places where even now we see so much controversy about how women's rights and women's safety is kind of taken, how seriously it's taken. There's been questions of how Facebook would deal with things like revenge porn, with sexual harassment, threats to women's safety, and these are things that have blown up even in the Western world. You had Gamergate, and you've had, these are issues that are still being resolved in the West. So to kind of have it kind of magnified in the atmosphere in a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, it's just, working on that on one end will help. But at the same time, we have to work on the cultural things. We have to take an honest look at the cultural practices and the behaviors that are being perpetuated, the role of women. And these are things that can only be done through education and through, the government, I think, does have to play a key role in this. The women need to be educated on what use is the internet. Is it just something the younger generation is using to go and, hang out with their friends? Or is it something that can potentially provide women information on health, be something that they can go to understand what their rights are in certain situations? These are things that women don't even understand, the potential empowerment they could gain just from information access on the internet. And so I think promotion of the internet by the government to women to say, women's health, these are one of the things a lot of people can access. The internet is a great source for that. Education, ID services, things like that. These are all things. Financial services, mobile money is something that's huge as well. That financial services, 40% of Pakistan does not have access to, which is crazy. So things like this, the government has a huge role to play in bringing people into its governance, by bringing people into the system. They're just falling through the cracks right now, and I think it's in their interest as well to promote the internet and say, what is the benefit that the population will gain from coming online, whether they're women or men, women, of course, in particular.
So you're still seeing the same perspective of Aziz. It's not only a legal, technical liability question, but it's also a governance question where the governments and private sector, talk about the private sector as well, and of course end users, they should come to the table and talk about what matters to them and a human rights framework.
Absolutely, because it's going to be a jurisdiction problem at the end of the day, right? You cannot have website providers deal with these kinds of issues. These kinds of issues, the only people, unfortunately, on the table right now, even if they're corrupt, are the governments. They are the only ones who have the direct legal capability of acting in all of these jurisdictions. It's not going to be Facebook who can come in and say, stop treating women like this, we're going to do this. It's going to have to be the government.
Fantastic perspective, Sana. I should hear from Nardin as well, so maybe she shares the same point as Sana, or maybe you can add your own perspective.
Well, the kind of legal liabilities website operators should accommodate for, particularly for women, is some safeguards that none of the things that actually tackled their individual lives is jeopardized online. Well, this is basically, as Sana has mentioned, such as something as revenge porn. This is something that's very hideous and something that's really heinous that can be done unto women, and something that's very life-threatening. This can damage not only their psychological status and their feel of security, but at the same time destruct their social lives and basically disable them from functionally participating. So basically, especially in the Arab world, the Middle East and North Africa, the women are always stapled to honor. So a woman is just her honor. Therefore, safeguards that tackle this kind of cultural aspect on the policy liability of websites would be a very great development.
Good, Nadine. I mean, I want to ask Azaz as well, Ms. Azaz, about this legal liability framework. Is it the right framework when it comes to trying to tackle the internet gender gaps, and what kind of regulatory framework you should think of under any governance policy or any governance perspective?
Well, it would be ideally if policies are a little bit gender sensitive, meaning that there's a legal framework for women to litigate, or there's a venue for women to not only there's. I like things to be like in the real time more than that abstract. For instance, like if I am targeted for expressing myself online, and then if I go to the government, and the government, there are laws that govern such things, libel and stuff, but if I go there and the laws are not activated, if the government in itself does not recognize that as something that it's meaningful or that it's my right and is not honoring the laws, then the laws is meaningless. You know what I mean? That's the point. The point is, like, there are many laws, and I feel like the law is not the problem is the context, the mindset, the general conscious of how society sees this as a right or not. It's very easy for a male to have the right to litigate if his name is smudged or something like that, if he's attacked personally or something, more than a woman would have that. It's always going to be not her word against anyone's word. Anyone who would say anything about a woman is just taken that it's true, because they would not say that if they didn't see anything. You know what I mean? So I feel like women are very vulnerable, even in that legal context. And whenever they are in that context, they're not coming forward as rightful individuals demanding their right within the Constitution or within the law that they're constituted. But no, they come as vulnerable anyway. So this has made a lot of women to shy away from going to the legal process of any kind, because it's very hard to prove that you've been raped. Until recently, we had a law. We did not have a law that that has rape in it. If a woman goes and says she has been raped, that means she had consensual sex. That means she's under a different type of stable of laws. Yeah. So again, I feel like the laws are just like it should be a manifestation of the social, cultural debate and involvement. I feel like laws that are completely divorced from this concept is not going to be meaningful, and we have that. We have a lot of constitution and a lot of laws and all that, but it's not affected. It's not into effect because the mind that governs those laws and implement them are not in sync. They're not together. They're not in harmony.
So yeah, so even if you find laws that protects women online or offline, they are not really enforced. So there are no mechanisms to enforce those laws into a judicial investigation or try to condemn people or protect women while they are harassed. So the law is not informed, so there are no mechanisms to try to really like punish the people who I don't know, for online, who commit like sex harassment or so. So even if you can find those laws, but they are not really enforced completely.
Yes, I just want to add one thing, because women are always blamed no matter what, and this this idea and this conception and this notion of that women always brought whatever happened to them on themselves. If you're raped because you dress in a certain way, if someone talked to you badly on Facebook or tried to harass you, it's basically something you've done. So this is something very prominent in offline, and it's carried over in the online as well. But the thing is, like with the online, is that the channels for you for which you can demand a correction, or you demand your right, it's very hard, and it does not have there are no legal, like most of the women that I've worked with who've been harassed or like been targeted because they're women or because they're activists, female activists online, they don't know if they have a venue for them to persecute, if there is a venue for them to go. And sometimes what's very more interesting is that nobody acknowledges harassment that happened online as a real pain or as a real issue. And it's like women who are
Yeah,
harassed
because
online, they don't consider them like victims of any sort. They think it's like online. It's, what is it? It's just like, it's a virtual life. So therefore, any pain that results from that interaction is not real.
so people say a woman, the harassment can only take one form, which is a physical harassment. But harassment can be moral.
Yeah.
Can be
Online,
through.
it's disregarded and completely not considered as real. So even women are not allowed to validate their pain. Their pain is not acknowledged, and it's just like they'll be, oh, take the photo off. If someone talked about you in a photo, just take it off. So like they're pushed to be in the not in the reactive, like not in the proactive way of like, no, this is my right, I should be. No, no, no. They've just asked to hush it and just sweep it under the rug and just like, it's not a big deal. Even if someone acknowledges that you're paying, but they're just like, it's not a big deal. Just let it go. It's not a big deal.
Fantastic perspective, Aziz. I want to hear from Sarah as well. So someone who is coming from a legal background. So what are the legal liabilities or that can be attached to operators or to any other structure, with a legal structure in Tunisia to protect or to be able to enforce laws when it comes to online human rights for women?
Well, I think the problem is multidimensional, actually. It is technical, it is social, it is cultural, it is policy-oriented or related, but it is also legal. Now I'm going to concentrate more about the policy and legal aspect of the question. I believe that policy plays a key role in in shaping the way we could overcome the gender gaps, especially in our MENA region or in the developing world in general. And now more than ever, I mean, the ICTs legal liability policies should be indeed socially ended, like the safeguards that are put, the policies that are put here should take in consideration and consider the socially related questions, because as the ladies mentioned before, the safety on the internet or the security question is very important in the developing world and in the Arab world in general, because it is a question of pride and honor in general, and we do not take in consideration the what women are facing online every and each time they are on Facebook or on Twitter or on any other platform, from harassment, from violence, from security-related issues. So, and to say the obvious, the female users are a vulnerable category, and in terms, as I mentioned before, the violence, etc. And sadly, the governments in the Arab world are not taking the ICT policy development as they are taking it as mostly technical, and they are not relating it to gender or to gender issues. The problem here is that we need to consider more technology policies as well as approaches to policy development through more holistic lens. Like we have to see the whole image and not only the technical aspect of it. We have to see the legal aspect of it. We have to make policies and laws that protect women online. But also we have to make measures and ways to enforce those laws. Because just putting the laws like that and writing them like that is not useful anyway. So the question here is to promote gender-based policies on a national level. So the governments should take that into consideration. We have to integrate gender perspectives into national ICT policies. As a key aspect into policy development, but we also have to put measures, to put effective ways to protect those laws and to enforce them.
Fantastic perspective, Sarah. So we reach, the two final questions. So I wanted to answer those two final questions together. So the first question, we go back at the problem of decentralization and the relationship between central and periphery. So do you think that ICT as a mechanism for empowerment, and for example, mobile internet, e-entrepreneurship, and technology can bring that digital gender divide in your local context? And can you tell us a success story in your country or a success project that use technology or ICTs that really contributed in the fostering the gap between internet gender policies? And as well, think of any kind of a national debate or a national multi-stakeholder debate when it comes to gender divide happening right now in your country or in your local context. So the first question is the policies of ICT empowerment, and the second question, what kind of a multi-stakeholder debate should be put forward in your local context? So should we begin by Sanna from Pakistan?
Sure. So what we've just talked about, the fact that there's no focus on the gender-based policy. It was a great point by Sarah there. I think that's kind of very, very clear in the way that these things are even promoted. And I think one of the biggest examples that I came across was this advertising or like promotional campaign that was signed by Zong, which is one of the major providers in Pakistan. They signed a deal with Manchester United, and as part of their promotional campaign, they sent 32 boys for a one-week training camp to Manchester United soccer school in Abu Dhabi, and that was their way of kind of promoting technology, internet use, and who was their target? Young boys. It was and that's the kind of thing that we will see repeatedly. Even ICT technologies, in a more subtle way, the ones that are targeting, closing the rural-urban divide, who do they focus on? They focus on the man of the household. So one of the major projects that was happening in Pakistan right now is this provision of solar energy panels. But because installation of these things is very expensive, mobile money was able to help people pay this off in a more broken up manner. So this allowed people to have access to energy. However, who are these ICT providers kind of targeting? Again, it's men. So these policies do very little to include women in showing women how they can find technology useful, showing women how they can express themselves on the internet, how their development can be increased.
And so what is the responsibility of men? If you're talking about men being empowered, what is our responsibility as well?
Right.
try
So
to.
I think one of the statistics says that, if you empower a woman, you empower the entire household. If you empower a man, you empower him. So I think one of the main things that needs to happen here also, is this cultural complement where the role of a man is not seen as being, the head of the household, and if he earns something, if he moves forward, his whole family has moved forward. The individual people in his family, whether they are his daughters or his wife, also kind of need to play that same role, and that's a cultural thing that needs to happen. But I think from the side of information communication technologies and people who are developing these technologies to help develop rural areas, they need to focus on how they're going to bring women, count their labor in the economic calculation, because most of the time all the work they do doesn't count. It doesn't matter, it doesn't contribute to GDP, those kinds of things. So they're kind of just not even in the equation for people in NGOs even who are trying to develop these things from the outside looking in. So I think those are one of the things that we can say. People working in civil society who are trying to develop developmental technologies, they need to look at how they can incorporate a woman and how her role in her family can be made, how her work in her family and in her community can be made easier, her life made easier, how she can be a participant on the internet through the use of these technologies. Because if you don't do that, then no matter how much this happens, all you're doing is increasing the divide, even in rural populations, between the men who can use these technologies and become technologically literate, and the women continually being pushed aside as not being participants in the technological revolution, and therefore not gaining the benefits that are going to come along with it.
Fantastic, yeah, fantastic perspective, Sanna. So I should hear from Nardin as well, from Egypt, about this issue of ICTs empowerment as an economic incentive, as well. What kind of governance structure or a multi-stakeholder governance structure that you can think of that can really empower women in the short, medium, and long term in your local context in Egypt?
As we have mentioned before, that the dilemma between the center and the periphery in Egypt is very manifest. Therefore, there has been a very high number of women that are making use of internet platforms, and especially Facebook. For some reason, Facebook is very popular in Egypt. I think it's due to the ease of connection and how they can easily find their networks. They actually feel more safe since the rest of the family is already online using Facebook, while Twitter is viewed more with skepticism and rest of social media networks. So what happens is that if you survey most of the groups that are used for traders, there are two major characteristics. First, most of the sellers are women, and second, they're mostly located in Cairo and Mansoura, like mostly urban and very more advanced regions than the rest of the country. Therefore, it's a very good promise for economic development and economic empowerment for women, but at the same time, it's a very problem of itself. There are two reasons to that. First, the size of the trade is very minimal, does not contribute, as Sana has said, doesn't contribute majorly to the economy. And second is that their size, they're not an organized group of people. If they can actually organize themselves, if advocacy works for them, and we can aggregate their interests, then we can have a gender policy, especially for entrepreneurs and traders online. Otherwise, the prospects don't seem very good, because it's very hard to aggregate the interest of so many fragmented individuals online. Hamza, you should unmute yourself.
Excuse me. I mean, do you have in Egypt any success story or any case of women who used the internet as an entrepreneurship structure to give to as an incentive for economic empowerment?
Oh yes, there's so
Is
many
there
people.
any?
Yeah, there's so many women that have taken a career shift into taking more demanded professions, such as being makeup artists, people who can actually carry out um, taking out doing courses or other services that they were not able to do if they have committed to the offline regulations.
Fantastic. So I should hear last but not least from Azaz on this question of do you think that technology or mobile technology or entrepreneurship or ICTs can empower women in the medium and long term, and as well what kind of multi-stakeholder, I mean you touched on that point, what kind of multi-stakeholder governance do you see that can unfold in your local context when it comes to empowering women on the internet? We can't hear you, Azaz. Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yeah,
think
good.
that a lot of like entrepreneur females are using platforms, internet to buy either their products or something they bring in and stuff like that. But this is completely unorganized economy. It's like it's not integrated into thing. They lack any structure, as Nadri mentioned, and I think it is making a micro improvement in economic situation for women, but I cannot see it as something magnificent, like because it lacks a lot of structure. And we also have a problem with online banking or e-banking altogether, because Sudan is under sanctions and we're completely cut out from the financial system of the world. And also within the country, we don't have any one of those mobile-based banking like M-Pesa in Eastern Africa. So the flow of money and in mechanism in which this money could flow across the state, across a big country like Sudan, or with stakeholders outside, is very limiting. So I think this aspect of financial difficulties and barriers are contributing more to women not really embarked in it with full force. And also the lack of structure, because they're entrepreneurial. The urge is there. Most of the women are household. They're the sole breadwinner of their houses, or they're needing to have extra money on the side. But there's no structure. There's no place to go to have such information or to organize themselves. So they're doing it in a very primitive way. It's just like a basic soup.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't you think that model of household cannot really take another form, enter an inter-community structure, maybe to leverage some kind of a business or e-business in Sudan, coming from the grassroots? Do you have any, for example, success story in Sudan of women using the internet to be empowered?
Yes, they are, but I cannot give them, like, I cannot see them as an business model because of the financial aspect of it. So money transfer is not done completely online. Most of it is like transferring money across a dealer or something like that. There's no quick service or turnout, and there's a limited pool of products that they can sell. So the most like sought after commodity that you would find online, and maybe among the diaspora they would have an business model because they live in countries that does not have these financial limitations, is the Toba Sudani that we wear. This is something that you can find in every corner on the internet, that a place that sells that. But again, I would like to see more areas where there's a better, like a different type of commodity than just like this, like istihlakiya. I don't know how to say that in English.
Yeah,
So
consumerism.
yeah, so I would like to see something that it's more like online courses, or even with these women who are putting all these like beautiful recipes online, I would like to see more mentoring or more of something that it's like more meaningful than just selling. But in Sudan, the short answer to your question, if there is an e-business model, in Sudan, it's very hard to happen because of these financial restrictions and the lack of an alternative channel for money transaction online.
Fantastic perspective, Azaz. So in 30 seconds, I want to hear the last perspective of Sarah about ICTs in Tunisia as a model, maybe as a country living in maybe I should believe that it's a successful transition. How do you see ICTs being empowering all women in Tunisia, and what kind of multi-stakeholder governance model do you see that should unfold in Tunisia in 30 seconds?
Well, in Tunisia, I think even if the process is a bit faster than other countries, but I think that we're still not working on reducing gender disparities, or not even the slightest bit, not on the offline world, not in the online world. What I see in Tunisia is like different initiatives, but they are like not government initiatives. They are private initiatives on training, on monitoring, on entrepreneurship experiences. But I think the effects of those trainings are still reduced, and they are limited, since they are not really taken in charge by the government or the public authorities. What I think here is that the government should work more on implementing ICTs on education, on entrepreneurship, on training women and women officials of the government to enhance their knowledge and to enhance their skills related to technologies and online skills in general. Now, what we can do, or what we as civil society can do, is to promote more the gender problems, like using the media. And I think that this is an issue that should be addressed in Tunisia. It is going on. It has been done, but it's not enough. I think we have to work more on that.
Fantastic. I think that's it. I mean, I think we finished this I should say fantastic and wonderful Igmena Google Hangouts. I think I was really honored and pleased to receive such a pool of excellent and wonderful I should say women leaders in their own countries. And believe me, this hangout was one of the best hangouts because you helped me even answer questions that in fact I didn't know about, and I'm really pleased to have you here, and I hope that we will meet soon. I think I will meet some of you soon, whether in the upcoming events in ICANN or in other related Igmena events. So thank you very much, I mean, for coming, and I will produce now, I think, a wonderful blog post for Igmena with all of your thoughts of your summary thoughts, and feel free if you have you want to expand on the issue and try to write from your own perspective on the topic. I mean, you have an open platform on Igmena that you can really contribute, and thanks again for coming and for sharing with us your perspective. So do you have any final thoughts or suggestions before I leave you, before I leave this humble and nice generation of women leaders? No final thoughts.
I can
Okay.
I think something that I didn't really get to say, but I think also we should kind of focus on is the government's role in kind of providing infrastructure. Mobile doesn't target women as well as broadband connections do, and in Pakistan especially, mobile is a much higher penetration for internet access than fixed broadband access does. And the thing with fixed broadband is that it provides internet access to an entire household, whereas mobile is for one person. So I think if we can kind of capitalize on women getting access because there's an internet access in their household, then that's a victory. That's a small victory, but it's a victory. And I think that's something we should try to push for, the increasing infrastructure in these countries where you can have fixed connections.
Okay, I'm committed to win those small wins and fight the good fights with you as a man who's committed to contribute in that process. And please share with me your perspectives, and please keep in touch, because we will have great events coming for you. So see you around, and thank you again for the third time for coming and for making this hangout such a success. Thanks, Sarah, Sanna, Umayma, who couldn't join, as well Nardin, the fantastic lady from Egypt, as well as Ms. Azaz, who come from the United States, as well as Ines, and everybody who contributed to the success of the hangout. And keep in touch, ladies, and thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Hamza. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.